Alright, so today we're back in the truck. We're going to be talking today about evolution versus creationism. And although I don't think it's going to be what you might expect, I'm not going to do a versus. I'm not going to really do a debate or look at both sides. Most anybody who is coming to this channel or coming to this video already has their ideas set on a particular viewpoint, and it's likely that I couldn't say anything to dissuade anybody, and I actually don't want to. The other day I came upon a particular show wherein they had two people. They had a question they posed, and the question was, should all religions embrace evolution? And they had one side with people who still believed, sorry, that's the side of the road, one side who still believed in creationism, and another side who believed in the theories of evolution. And I found it very interesting. I watched the whole thing. It was about an hour long. And I was fascinated by the fact that I took a totally different take on it, and that's what I want to bring out today. I'm going to try and do it quickly because I'd like to do it in about 10 minutes. So I find it really interesting, you know, on the side of science. I've listened to several things lately in addition to this particular program, wherein a person was defending the theory of evolution. What's interesting is that the theory is pretty sound in the sense that if you get deep enough into it, the science has come to believe it pretty strongly because they keep finding more and more evidence for it. So it's very hard to argue with, and the people who were on the other side, who still believed in creationism, they just kind of got slaughtered for the most part. And so it was pretty interesting that way. And yet I found a couple of angles that I don't think are looked at. You know, I remember an interview not long ago that I watched where there was a fellow, his YouTube channel is Cosmic Skeptic with a S-K-E-P-T-I-C, Skeptic with a K. In any case, he said, he was talking to a fellow, I think they were doing a debate, and he said, you know, basically we're looking at all of the evidence that's there, and it you know, it shows that increasingly it looks like there was a history of evolution, and that the Earth is very old. Now he says, of course, he says, you know, consciousness and the whole human experience could be basically, you know, the idea that the Earth is totally made up and that all reality is really just kind of a stage, basically Matrix style, you know. And for those of you who haven't seen The Matrix, it's, well, yeah, most people have seen The Matrix, but it's basically the idea is that, you know, all humans were, you know, there was artificial intelligence and the robots took over, and that they used humans as batteries, and that, you know, that they created a simulated life so that humans could keep them alive so they could live off their energy. And yeah, it's a really interesting show, kind of fun. Another reason I want to make this quick is that I don't have air conditioning in this truck, and so I have to close the windows for you to hear me. So therefore we're going to try to do this before I sweat to death. He says, unless of course that's the case. And interestingly, you know, it's like that, I found that really fascinating, because the idea of on the side of creationism is basically that. It's the idea that that the Earth was created by miracles, basically. That's the whole idea, and that everything we see is the idea that it's God's creation, and that it being God's creation, He created it in a miraculous way, in a way that's outside of human understanding. So I found that kind of interesting, and any looking at the evidence, I find it kind of interesting that people are still trying to prove the creation idea through evidence. It's like everybody in the Matrix trying to prove that that the world that they exist in really exists by the evidences and the things that they can't see. What they can't see, of course, is the Matrix. They can't see that, in the movie, that they're really just batteries for a bunch of robots. So I found this kind of interesting, the fact that there is a debate at all. But what I find more interesting is the fact that, in order to grow in knowledge, in order to expand beyond where we're at, okay, it takes a person who, for all intents and purposes, believes in miracles and believes that something outside of what we see is actually real. Now think about that for a second. Believes that something outside of what we can see is real. Okay? So, and we see this. It was interesting in the debate because there was a fellow on the side of evolution, and he says, look, we're willing to change. You guys won't change. You won't even consider it, because, it's like, he says, the more we come along, it's like, he says, we're looking, if we could find something that would prove that the earth is 6,000 years old, we believe it. And he says, but it doesn't exist, and it's true. The more you look, the more it looks really old. And I found some of their most convincing stuff is the fact that they say that everything's so old. It's like the further that I move down the path that I'm on, it's like, and the more that it seems like I feel touched by something that lies in the realm of the unknown, the more old I feel. It's like it makes, decades seem, it makes decades seem small. It makes lifetimes seem small. It seems like if there, as I consider the idea of deity, some sort of deity, and of course I have my own ideas about that, and I won't reveal them at this moment, but my ideas of deity within the realm of the unknown, reaching down and touching me and moving me, it feels a lot more like gardening than it does like, stacking bricks of clay. It feels like a painstaking, long course of being made into something better than I am. And that, for me, is when they talk about the old earth idea, that's what's the most compelling thing to me about it, not the fossil record, because there's huge gaps in the fossil record. And it is hard to jump from, okay, he was a fish. All right, now they're on land and walking around, and it's like the line goes from one to the other, and you're like, well, okay, maybe, but it sure seems that from all evidence, the earth is very old. And it fits with, it seems, the way that God, or that power that maybe manipulating man for it's his own or her own good. It seems to be something that he's in it for the long run, so to speak. So it fits in that way, in a way. And so I find it interesting that the creationists, or those who are set on creation, that they just can't imagine that or interpret things a different way. Or even in this, how do I put this? Because I'm going to switch in a second, and I'm going to sound like a creationist. they don't seem to be able to even look and go, okay, well, it sure appears like, you know, whatever divine influence there was, even supposing it's set up like the Matrix, and it's all miracles, and that everything we see is just an illusion. Well, then it appears that God set it up so that it appears that God set it up to look like the earth is really old, you know? And it's the same with the idea of the earth is round. We've had that for quite a while, you know? And it makes you wonder now that all this is coming out, and we're seeing things that we've never seen before. And it almost seems like we're getting a better glimpse at what the divine may be doing. You know, and if it's all set up to look that way, but it's a sham, well, then it almost seems like it would be good to look at it for what it is and go, well, why would the Creator set it up to look this way? If this is really if the earth really was created 6,000, in the last 10,000 years, why would God set it up to look so old? But it's strange because on the creationist side, they don't seem to be willing to look out and consider, well, why does it look this way? And that seems to be a fatal flaw, because they can't, there's places they can't go, so there may be truth that can't be discovered, even supposing that their scenario is true. Now, let's look at the other side. I found it really interesting. This fellow was talking about evolution. He says, look, I'll accept it if I can see any evidence of it. And he's right. You know, it's the idea that you should just lock on to a dogmatic view of things just because that's what someone says, when all the evidence shows otherwise. That seems to be a mistake. And yet I find it fascinating. I'll probably close with this point. I find it interesting that all scientists who have broken through and discovered new things were ones, and I'm not talking about the people who are kind of building on what's already been said, but they were ones who considered things that were completely out there. And this guy went on to say, he says, look, I'll drop it and we'll totally reconsider. He says, that happened to physics. He says, in the early 1900s. He said, basically, he says, people said, don't go into physics because it's all been done. We know how the world works. There's no reason to study physics. He's looking at this as a scientist, right? Why would you study physics? Newtonian physics. He says, and then came a series of discoveries through Einstein and others that proved that everything we knew was totally wrong. And we had to throw it all in the garbage and start over. And he says, and I'm willing to do that. And yet I find it fascinating that I don't know that he will, because I don't know that he's willing to consider that which is absolutely crazy, absolutely out there. And the reason I say that, I'm thinking about specific people. I'm thinking about, for example, Einstein. He describes basically having an encounter with the unknown and divine intelligence. Now, I don't know if he would have said divine intelligence, but we can even take that out if you want to. But what he basically had was a series of visions and dreams, sudden insights that came in the form of pictures and symbols. He talked about how he got his idea of space-time. When he was headed somewhere, and he looked in like a rear view mirror or something. He saw this clock tower, and then he had the thought, well, what would happen if? And he saw in his mind certain images, and he talks about doing this throughout his life. And another time about he was playing the violin, and he imagined something, and a certain burst of light, a certain burst of intelligence came upon him. And it was something that was completely outside of what was being looked at. I think also about, the fellow that did A Beautiful Mind. I watched a documentary on him a while back. And the fellow in A Beautiful Mind, it was really interesting because his real gift was, and everybody around him said, this guy's incredible. This guy's just, he's a mathematician of all, beyond mathematicians. The people he worked with, I haven't even read a book on him, so I'm talking from a documentary. So, but the guys they interviewed that were around him were just like, he was just beyond them, and they talked about how, and he talked about how he, want to put it the way he put it. I don't want to slaughter it, but he talks about how he had this gift for recognizing patterns. Again, seeing things that people don't see. Things that lie in the realm of that which is just, when I say out there, I mean, it's like, really, when you look at the people who made these breakthroughs, they were right on the edge of out there, just right on the edge of crazy. And A Beautiful Mind really shows it, because, this guy, his mind was going right out there on the outskirts of the realm of sanity, considering the inconceivable. You could almost say into the realm of if it were true, it would have to be miraculous. And so here he is considering these things, and it was interesting because he went through a particularly stressful time in his life, and something snapped. And when that something snapped, it was like something slipped with the gears, and he began to notice patterns that were not useful, patterns that led nowhere. So this is a fascinating concept, and what I see is that it's like, I see on those that are on the side of, as far as our scientific theories today, what I almost say, it's like, okay, I'm with you. Okay, I'm looking at the evidence. I'm seeing what you're seeing. Okay, but I think the reason it's so hard for them to conceive of the creationist view is because, really, based on the evidence, it's crazy. It lies in the realm of out there. It lies in the realm of, it would have to be miraculous for it to be true. But I almost wonder if it is a mistake to stop believing in the idea that there's something miraculous, and to stop believing that we can find the miraculous. When you look at what happened in the early 1900s, it basically took the miraculous and brought it into our worldview. And in a way, I think in a way that's a lot of the gift that science has to offer, is that it's reaching out there for the miraculous. Wondering. And I think at the point where science and scientists can no longer reach out and say, well, there's no chance that any miracle happened here. I kind of wonder if that's the point where science may reach a brick wall and be able to go no further, when there are no more minds that can stop and go, well, that sounds crazy. I wonder if it's true. Then I wonder if we will have lost that which could bring us full circle in this whole question. And then on the other side, I go back to the creationists and say, well, if all of these things keep appearing this way, but you cannot fathom, if you know your view of God still has to fit into this box of your own interpretation, then I kind of wonder if it's just as big a dam and just as impeding. Shake, shake. My truck going over some bumps. I kind of wonder if, even if you're right, even if the scriptures, you know, the Bible could be interpreted completely literally and all those things, and this is all a facade, and the fact that the earth looks really old is not really true, and it's all, set up by the Creator to for some reason. If that's the case, then to me, if a God in heaven set it up this way, made it look really old, or did all these things, then why could we be missing a piece of what God would be trying to say in His creation if we ignored the fact that it looks really old? To me, the idea that my soul is very old, that God is very old, that creation is very old, it kind of fits in a way because I feel old. And if in reality we are very old, then that has some ramifications. That kind of implies that we're not going to get out of it easily. It's like the parent who tenaciously says, I expect you to make your bed, and I expect you to make it and for it to look a certain way. And, and it still doesn't look that way. And I know you have some place to go and things you want to do. You have a heaven you want to arrive at. But, I am patient. I am old. And it's okay that it takes as long as it takes. And there's grace. In the Christian view, there's justification. Hey, it's okay. And yes, it's painful. It can take a long time. But I want you to actually be good. To actually be righteous, for lack of a better word or way to put it. And we'll take our time. Take as long as it takes. That's scary. Does that not scare you? And if there is a Father looking over us, and He's that patient, it's interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see what light the divine has to shed upon us. Or if you can't believe that there is a divine feeding us all this, it'll be interesting to see how the universe unveils itself to us and what we'll find there. Let's not be so quick. Let's not be so quick. Let's let it unfold. Let's be open. Let's be humble. I had another thought, and I can't remember what it was. Something about it being old, taking time. Another thought that's occurred to me. So let's suppose that, now of course this takes a stretch for those who are atheists, maybe not for those who are agnostic, but let's just take a stretch here. Let's imagine if there is a divine influence, and that divine influence, that divine maker of the universe, has taken millions or billions of years to create all this, then that really makes me consider the idea that perhaps we might want to get back in touch with that divine influence, because in the last, and this goes back to the creationist side, in the last 7,000 to 10,000 years, look at what we've done. Since the time that whatever divine influence there is gave us our own heads. We've created some pretty big problems on this planet. And a lot of suffering. And if it's all true that really we're facing, massive earthly changes because of man's intervention, or us thinking that we can figure it out and we know what to do, it makes me think, if there is a divine, any sort of divine higher intelligence, it might be in time to begin seeking its counsel. And I don't mean programs. I mean for me, for you. I think the most important question we can ask is to not look around and say, well, this looks like what is right, this is what I'm told is what is right, but God, what is right, and what is right for me to do today? And if there's a Garden of Eden, whether that's a way of life, whether that's the real thing, whatever, to return to, let's head back. Let's stop thinking we know better. So those are some thoughts for today. It's very hot in this truck. It's time for me to open the windows. So that means it's time to sign off, I guess. And my 10-minute video turned into a half an hour. Who knows if anybody will find it? Maybe someday. We'll see. I don't know. And if you like this, I see everybody saying to like and share. I figure you'll do that if you like it and if you want to share it. The only book I've ever written It's more like a pamphlet, and you can get it on Amazon. It's called The Parable of the Talents. It examines some of the themes that I've maybe touched on today, but takes a different view. It looks at the story of Jesus Christ, or the parable of Jesus Christ, called The Parable of the Talents. And I think you'll find it fascinating, even if you're agnostic or atheist, particularly if you are. But I don't think that there's anything that if you are a Christian, I don't think there's anything you'll find offensive unless you're extremely dogmatic and you can't think anything outside of what you've received so far. I think anybody coming from any degree of open-mindedness might enjoy it. So I guess that's a plug. But more than a plug, I think you might enjoy it. You can get it on Amazon. The Parable of the Talents by J.A. McCormick. So anyways, God bless. Talk to you later.